Marissa Hahn, who is not able to be here tonight. We have some VIPs and celebrities in the room, which we'll call out later in the evening. And I think Christy would like to thank a couple of people also.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody, thank you so much for coming out. This is amazing. And thanks to all the people that Kerry just mentioned. This is my first reading, so I am really nervous. And just thrilled that you're here. Thank you.
So first we're going to start. This is the book, Searching for Jimmy Page.
Available over here.
All right, available over here by Dana Frank. If anyone would like a signed copy by Christy, absolutely accommodating. And if anybody doesn't know, drop the book. So if anybody does not know who Jimmy Page is, this is the extraordinary Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page was the guitarist for Led Zeppelin, and he is the inspiration for this book. So here we go. Let's get to the heart of the story. When was the first time you saw Jimmy Page?
Well, I will answer that. I also want to start off by saying the only other time that I was here was in 2005, and that was to hear my Goddard College professor Martha Southgate read from her novel, Third Girl from the Left. And she is here tonight to see me read, so it's like this weird full circle thing. I know she's got to slip out in a few minutes, but thank you so much for coming, Martha. I really appreciate it. The first time I saw Jimmy Page, I'm the youngest of four in my family by a big margin. The next to the youngest is 10 years older, and he was a big Led Zeppelin fan. So I grew up with the music around me and his posters in his room around me. I have this vivid memory of when I was about 4 years old. You remember when you used to be able to stand up in the front seat of the car? Yeah.
Some of us may.
Well, I had this memory of standing up in the front seat of the car, my mom driving, and Whole Lotta Love came on the radio, and I started bouncing up and down, just singing Whole Lotta Love, Whole Lotta Love, this little 4-year-old kid. The first time that I really saw him, I came home from church of all places with my mother when I was 15 in 1985, and Steve was watching, my brother Steve was watching TV broadcast The Song Remains the Same on TV, and walked into, I could hear the music coming in and recognized it.
So you were coming from church,
yes,
seeing Led Zeppelin for the first time.
Yeah, I probably just encountered a sermon about the dangers of Led Zeppelin and rock and roll and what backmasking and all that. You remember that big brouhaha in the 80s. So yeah, I walked into the living room and saw Jimmy Page on the screen, and it was like this dark angel with a 6-string. It was mesmerizing. My reaction was really visceral.
So one of the stories that I thought was so intriguing, the story of your mother with the ironing board. Can you recount that and tell that to everyone?
So my mother was this conservative Southern woman. She was older than most of the mothers of my friends, and not somebody who was interested in celebrity or just a very stoic person. But she recognized in her kid this obsession that was brewing right at that moment. And so she watched the movie with me, and they did an encore presentation at 7.
And the movie was The Song Remains the Same, correct?
Yeah. And so they did an encore.
Everyone should check it out. It's iconic.
You've got to see it if you haven't seen it. But they did an encore presentation at 7 that night, and by then I was just like a rabid fan. And she set up the ironing board in the living room and watched with me, and had to suffer through me gesticulating wildly about, oh, did you see that? Did you see what he did? And so it's like these two worlds colliding, this new rock and roll world.
And something else your mother did, which many people may remember and some may not, the dial phone.
Oh. Yeah, so Jimmy put out, does anybody remember his solo album, Outrider? Remember that from 1988? Okay, somebody does.
Okay,
so,
one's enough.
Right, so I was just really, really excited about that. And he did a 2-hour call-in show with Rockline. And so I was so excited I was going to get to talk to Jimmy Page, and I'm dialing my ass off, just for an hour, dialing busy signal, hang up, dial, busy signal, hang up. And couldn't get through, and got really exasperated. And my conservative mother's like, calm down, go get a soda. And I have this memory of her dialing for the next hour.
If anyone who remembers, your finger gets exhausted. If you were dialing in for a song to a radio, which I did Stairway to Heaven many times,
Oh, yeah.
as did everyone in New Haven, Connecticut, it's exhausting.
But she did that so her neurotic daughter could chill out for a bit.
Good mom.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, Christy, how did you find and lose your way back to writing? You lost it for a few years, correct?
Yeah, I was very close to my mother, and she died in 2003. And I just kind of fell apart for a while. I was in the bell jar after she died for a bit, and then a few years later, I met my late husband, Bill, and really, I didn't write during the time after she died. I did manage to finish my MFA, so I did do my creative thesis.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Got through with that, but I couldn't do anything else with it. I was just creatively drained. So, I met Bill a few years later and just really enjoyed coming back to life and enjoying life again.
And Jimmy Page was along the way.
Yeah.
Like literally helping the page with the pages.
Yeah. Well, there's a story there that I'll tell in a second. But Bill knew that I had a story about Jimmy Page, which I'll tell in a minute. And he always said that should be a book. And so I promised both my mom and Bill that I would write this book. And I lost Bill in 2014, and I didn't want to go through that same grieving process that I did with my mother, where I just kind of fell apart. So I really turned to art as salvation, and wrote like crazy, and I'm proud to tell them both, hey, look, I finally did it.
And the book is absolutely extraordinary.
Oh, thank
and
you.
At this moment, too, we'd like to say something about all the angelic people in the room, and everybody remembers somebody who's their angel, and we all have our angels. And we'd like to remember Christy's mother, Frances, and the angel on earth, Hub, who came to New York City and helped Christy get back to her writing and brought us this extraordinary book. So let's give a cheers to Christy's fiance, Hub. Thank you so much, and his son Garth is here, and we're really happy to have all of you here in New York City at the Red Room, Lucky Luciano's Palm Court, a little Halloween fabulosity, spookiness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so shout out to Garth Risk Hallberg, Bill's son over here, who was kind enough to come out.
We have a lot of amazing people in the room tonight, so thank you for all the wonderful energy. So, back on track. What we all want to know, have you ever met Jimmy Page?
Okay. Technically, we're going to define this kind of broadly. So as I say, I was having trouble after Mom died, and in 2005, I heard that Jimmy and Brian May from Queen would be judging a guitar contest for charity in London, Riffathon. Has anybody ever heard of that? They did it in London, and I think they did it for a couple years.
What year was that?
2005, summer 2005. So I thought, I've got to do something out of character to kind of shake myself back into the land of the living. And anybody who knows me knows I'm kind of a meek person in a way, and not so much. Okay. Okay. But I decided I would go. I'd never been out of the country before. I'd never really been anywhere. But I knew I had to go alone. So I got a passport, I got a ticket, and said, hell with it, I'm going. And something inside me just said, if you can make your way there, and this person is sort of a part of my relationship with my mom and my brother Steve, and is a constant in my life. His music, the magic of Led Zeppelin and Jimmy Page. And so he kind of became the gatekeeper, and I thought if I could just get there and make contact, and not in some weird icky way, but maybe then I would have the strength to come back and get my life together.
So what happened?
I went, and I was standing in the entryway, waiting to go in.
Of where?
The Hammersmith Palais in London. So I hear this voice, and I would know his voice anywhere. It's kind of like the voice of God, but with an English accent. And in he walked, and I thought, what the hell? I thought rock stars just kind of materialized. And he was walking in the same way I did. And so I had this moment where we were pretty close together, but I couldn't do anything. I was so stunned. So I had a couple more moments like that with him until the end of the evening when he was leaving, and he came out of the backstage area, and we were shoulder to shoulder. Well, to a degree, I'm 5'1.5" and he's taller, so anyway, we were right there together, and I couldn't say anything. And he started walking on down the hallway, and something snapped, much as it does for Luna in the book. I started running after him, and I'm chasing him down the hall with the Hammersmith Palais, just running like crazy, and he's got bodyguards around him, kind of urging him to the end of the hall, and I caught up with him at the stairway of all places, and I think it was leading down to a car park or something, but I screamed the only thing that came to mind, "Jimmy, I came all the way from America just to meet you." So not my most dignified moment, but there you go.
Did you get it done?
Okay, so I screamed that, and I'm standing there, and he stopped, and he looked at me, and then his bodyguard starts tapping his shoulder and kind of trying to urge him on down. And he looked at me and he smiled, and I'll never forget it. And he smiled and said, "I'm sorry," and went on down. Now, see, in my mind, that counts as a meeting. So yes, I have met Jimmy Page.
Okay, checked off the list. Okay, I would say definitely that's a meeting. That's a rock star encounter. It's a real meeting.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dana Frank?
I'm sorry?
What do you think?
I think it's awesome.
Okay, she thinks it's awesome. Dana's met every rock star on earth. So
I was just saying last time I saw Jimmy was in Dana's office.
back to the novel. How did Luna is the lead character, and how did you find your way to Luna? And I'd love if you could possibly read an excerpt from the book about Luna and where this book starts, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Luna is a character who's been knocking around in my head for a long time. Can you hear me okay? Am I in and out?
Breaking up. Hold on.
Bye, Roger. Okay. Okay, good job, Dana.
Testing, is that better? Okay.
Do you want me to hold it, Christy, while you read?
Well, I'll lead into it and then I'll let you hold it.
Okay.
So Luna is a character that's been kind of knocking around in my head for a long time, and I really like her. I just think she's smarter than I am. She's more talented than I am. She's all the things that I can't, well, apart from being an outcast. I think she's much cooler than I am. I mean, there's no way I could rock a mohawk. I just couldn't do it. So the story is largely set in the winter of 1988, when 18-year-old Luna, we follow her from her journey from eastern North Carolina, her family's farm, to the UK to try and find Jimmy Page and solve the mystery that her dead mother set in motion when Luna was a child. Is Jimmy Page her father? So that's the premise. So having said that, I'll read, the first chapter is really short, I'll read that. The night my great-grandfather died, frigid air howled through the pines and swirled down the chimney of his shack near our fallow tobacco fields in eastern North Carolina. My grandmother and I kept vigil at his bedside, a battery-operated space heater oscillating at our feet, kerosene lamps lofting shadows on the walls. He'd refused to install electricity and insisted the fireplace remain unlit at night. He claimed spirits talked to him through the flue at the witching hour. So did birds, especially owls. He said they were good omens, unless they flew inside your house. Owl in the house means death's coming, he'd say. I lolled my head against the wall, bare like all the others. No family portraits, or prosaic artwork, or thumbtacked greeting cards with snapshots of my great-grandfather's progeny tucked inside. The shack was cluttered with clothes and other debris from a fading life, but the walls were naked. He preferred it that way. No memories or illusions, except the ones that came to him at night. At the stroke of 12, he wrapped his knotty fingers around my wrist and squeezed. "Can you hear it?" he asked, his voice like winter wind crackling through kindling. An icy shiver ran through me. He had not spoken since that balmy summer night when I was 9 years old, when the river ran dry and the pines began to cry. The night my mother committed suicide, an abomination he'd called it, a sin against Providence. He'd sat expressionless in his rocking chair while Grandma delivered the news, his face bathed in candlelight, then hobbled into the woods and chanted my mother's name, like an incantation, a prayer for deliverance. Then he'd spoken no more. I inched closer to him, close enough to smell the implacable stench of the dying. "Hear what?" I asked timorously. "Owls," he said, "like music." My body fluttered, as if I were falling out of oblivion, slowly, unwittingly, the air prickly and thin. Long ago, I'd heard a song about owls crying in the night, the singer's wail primeval, in sync with marauding guitar licks, the beat like jungle drums. I felt them vibrating inside me just then, like a distant echo from another life, one that still included my mother. "Can you hear the music?" he persisted, struggling to raise his head. Grandma implored me with her eyes. "I can hear it, Granddaddy." He gave a shuddering laugh. "Ain't in your head, girl." "Where then?" I waited, watching his chest rise and fall, his fitful breast grow shallow, the caesura between life and death. "It's in your soul," he finally said. He nudged his Bible beside him, giving voice to verse. Ecclesiastes 6:10, "That which hath been is named already." He dropped my arm and exhaled, his face pallid and drawn. Grandma and I stood over him, bearing witness, sleep pelting the windows, that song about the owls, its searing guitar haunting me, like fragments of memory I buried with my childhood, grainy images of my mother in her yellow bedroom with her lavender incense and votive candles, her black and white photograph of a rock star standing on a stage at Kezar Stadium in 1973, dressed all in white, lips pursed, unruly dark hair framing a beatific face, guitar strapped over his shoulder, arms spread wide as if he were awaiting crucifixion. The two of them were intertwined in my mind's eye, like ashes wafting in a summer wind, waiting for water to receive them. I was born of water and moonlight, and of her, and of him. Grandma stopped the clock on the mantel to mark the moment of my great-grandfather's passing, as if halting time held power, then, forever now. She handed me a flashlight, then draped her overcoat around me, the scent of Jergens lotion and talcum powder lingering in the fabric. "Go on home, honey," she said. "I shouldn't have brought you here." "You didn't," I said faintly. I'd followed her from our farmhouse at dusk, trudged the quarter-mile past the barn and hog pen, through the woods where the footpath ended, as if I'd heard my great-grandfather's keening call. "Go home," Grandma said, prodding me toward the door. "I'll be along directly." I wrenched away from her and stared at my great-grandfather, the withered shell that remained, searching for some part of him that still looked vital, the outline of his body beneath the quilt, legs splayed as if the cat he used to own were nestled between them, his arm dangling over the side of the bed. Grandma tucked it underneath the quilt her mother had made, tattered and yellowed with age, the same quilt that had covered her while she lay dying over half a century before, cancer ravaging her breast, flies swarming the window screens, attracted by the fetor of rotting flesh, all because her husband had believed he could heal her with ritual and prayer. I harbor a picture of that night in my mind's eye, my great-grandmother's bewildered stare, her mouth a perfect O, a last word half spoken, an oracle undelivered. Now he was dead, his jaw unhinged, spittle on his grizzled chin, his only child by his side, the daughter whom he only recognized after she'd tell him her name, the name he'd given her 70 years ago. "Do like I say," Grandma said sternly. I stood there breathless, my great-grandfather's milky eyes fixed and dilated, seeing nothing, seeing everything, boring into mine. Grandma cupped my chin in her hand. "Don't look back," she said with urgency in her voice. I never had before. not after my mother died. Like my great-grandfather, I had not spoken her name since. I had not heard her voice in a brooding summer rain, or felt her hand clasping mine in a sibylline dream, or seen her face in the shadow of a stealthy hunter's moon. I had erased her, and the sainted sinner who conjured music and magic from an electric guitar, his photograph in my mother's bedroom, her unfaithful talisman. I'd never looked back, never, until that winter's night in February 1988, when I was 18 years old. The past summoned like fire in my great-grandfather's shack, phantom owls crying in the night. It was inevitable. Perhaps it was even Providence. Now would return me to then. The tale demanded to be told.
Thank you, Christy Alexander Hallberg. So here's the first chapter to an amazing book, Searching for Jimmy Page.
Thank you.
So to dig just a teeny bit deeper before we wrap everything up, a little bit about the mysticism, a little bit about Jimmy Page, places you visited along the journey of Zeppelin, Plant, Page, Woodstock, Michelle Phillips, Claudia. Tell us everything you can, quickly.
Well, I don't know Michelle Phillips, and I've not been to Woodstock,
But Claudia really reminds me of Michelle Phillips.
when we talked and you mentioned that, I thought, nobody said that before, but it's so right on. So I really appreciate that interpretation, and now I can only see her as Michelle Phillips from the 60s. So thanks for just putting that in my brain. Now I can't get it out. No, she was a hippie chick.
Claudia is the mother of Luna.
Yeah.
And she's the lover of life of Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
And she and Christy and Luna have a lot of things in common.
I don't know that I have all that much in common with Claudia.
Jimmy Page.
Okay. I wish. No, well, as I say, when I made that trip in 2005, I made that trip 4 times now, 2005, 6, 15, and 18. So all the locations, the second half of the book is when Luna takes off for the UK and goes to various places that are Zeppelin related. So I've been to all those places, including, I've not been inside Tower House or any of Jimmy's houses, but I've been to the outside. So Tower House, Old Mill House, where John Bonham died in Windsor. I've been to Boleskine House outside Inverness, which is the house that Aleister Crowley used to own and then Jimmy Page owned for a while. And I've been to Headley Grange, Bronyar. That's not in the book. Maybe I'll put that in another book. But
Because we're gonna keep searching for Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
So tell us some of your most poignant moments on your exploration of England and going through, some of the Jimmy Page exploration.
Wow. Well, one thing that's not directly Jimmy Page related, but it's Led Zeppelin related. And I think you mentioned somebody in the audience knows John Bonham, or knew John Bonham, knows Jason Bonham.
There are a couple of people that know Jason.
Okay.
I knew Jason also, and Jason has a band that people know called Bonham.
Yeah.
And then we also have a couple of people that have some Jimmy Page stories in the audience tonight too, if they wanted
Cool.
to share. But let's go on about your journey to England.
Well,
The UK.
you asked for something that was particularly poignant, and I went to pay my respects to John Bonham's grave outside Kidderminster in 2006. And I was the only one in the graveyard, in the cemetery, and I was just standing in front of his headstone. My brother Steve was a drummer. He's a very good drummer, and he idolized John Bonham. And that's really how he got into Led Zeppelin, which then got me into Led Zeppelin. But I was just standing there paying tribute, and somebody, I noticed out of the corner of my eye, somebody coming, and it was a woman, and it turns out that it was John Bonham's sister, Deborah. And there we were, she was, thank me for coming, and we wound up talking for several minutes, not about her rock star brother, but about, not her rock star brother Bonzo, but her adored older brother John. And I talked about my adored older brother, Steve, the drummer, And we were just two women together who loved our brothers and were swapping stories. And it was such a tender moment. And I mean, she hugged me before I left. And I was, thinking to myself later, I didn't get a picture of that, but then I think that's the way it was supposed to be, because it wasn't a celebrity moment. It was a really poignant moment of two people who had lost, well, I hadn't lost my brother, but I'd lost my mother. Two people who knew what loss was and were just sharing stories.
And again, the paths to the stairway to heaven.
Yeah. So that was a really wonderful moment.
So on another question, and since we're talking about things dealing with mysticism and passing and moving forward into other sides and encounters that happen in different places, Zoso. Zoso. Does anybody know what Zoso is, or have
Everybody knows what that is.
Well,
I don't want to hear it. I want that to remain a mystery.
so this is, you can explain absolutely more than I can.
No, I can't. And I love that Jimmy won't really talk about it. He really has, cultivated that mystique, and even to this day, lets that be a mystery. And I like that, and I'd like for it to continue to be.
And about some of the mystical moments in your book and some of the inspiration in North Carolina and folklore, and how is that intertwined?
Wow. Well, the great-grandfather in the story is named after and based on my own great-grandfather, Jesse. And I never knew him, but he took a faith healing correspondence class and tried to heal his wife with ritual and prayer of breast cancer, just like in the book, and it didn't work. But he was like the local healer in my community, or in the community where they lived, long before I was born. And he's just kind of become this big figure in my imagination and in my own family lore. So it was kind of a no-brainer that he would pop up in the book in some way.
So lastly, is there anything more you would like to say, or should we see if some of the people that actually have had encounters with Jimmy Page would like to say something about that?
I'm dying to hear about that.
So if anyone has any questions, we'll take a couple of questions, and then we'd love to hear some stories about some real encounters with Jimmy Page. What does everyone think? Woo! Are there any quick questions?
Did you send him a copy?
Not yet. If anybody's got his mailing address,
I told Christy she has to ask on she's been doing 1,000,001 podcasts, interviews. She is on the book trail, and I told her she has to say on everyone, if anyone knows Jimmy Page, please let me know. If you can get him a copy, please let me know.
maybe
So if
one
anybody
day.
has those connections, please do. So should we maybe hear a couple of stories? Would anybody like to tell, or what do you think? Please come up.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh, God. What am I meant to say? No, how you
Please
doing?
introduce yourself.
I'm Gianluca Tramontana. I'm a music journalist, recovering music journalist, radio broadcaster on Radio Free Brooklyn. Sitting with Gianluca's show Wednesday, 6 p.m. by the way. And
Please tune in.
yeah, please tune in. Currently a record producer. I hate saying that.
And
but I don't.
produced records in Cuba. Can you imagine?
Yeah, all sorts of
Wow.
weird things. Anyway, jack of all trades, I'm hopeless at all of them, so that's okay. But we were talking earlier how I didn't meet Jimmy Page, but I have a story when I did meet Jimmy Page, and I went for a couple of years when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they were doing it at the Waldorf Astoria initially, from the early. I think it started in the early 90s, or before it was televised. They would do it at the Waldorf Astoria, and I went a couple of.
Uh-oh.
Oh, good. All
It's
right.
all right,
I sound better with the microphone off. But anyway, they used to do it at the Waldorf Astoria, and I went a couple of years. The first year, maybe I went 3 years. I don't. But anyway, I went a couple of years for sure. The first time, the Yardbirds got inducted. And obviously Jimmy Page was in the Yardbirds. And the second time I went, Led Zeppelin got inducted. And before it was televised, the actual speeches and the inductions went on for hours and hours and hours. It was more fun on TV than actually being there, to be honest. But anyway, it was cool being in a room with all these people. And then at the end of all the speeches, for the few that remained awake, they would do a jam session, and everyone would sort of congregate and start discussing what to do. And Paul Schaefer was the house band for both those years, and I think many other years before and after that. So Jimmy Page used to play, there's a Led Zeppelin 3, there's a song called Hats Off to Harper, right? That's off 3? And that's for Roy Harper, who I'm a huge fan of. He's fantastic. And Jimmy Page has played on a lot of his records under a pseudonym. Storm Cock he played on, I think Sophisticated. Anyway, he played on a few of those records. And so when everyone's getting ready, I started talking to Jimmy Page, and I said, hey, you know, if Roy Harper got inducted, you'd have a hat trick. And he's, oh yeah, Roy, yeah. So we started talking for a few minutes. It was very nice. And then Robert Plant was next to him, and he was talking to someone else. And then out of the blue, John Paul Jones turned up. And he goes, Alan. And then I was really smart, actually, because I shut the fuck up. And because he goes up and he goes, oh, hello, Jimmy, hello, Robert. Hey, should we get upstage and have a fiddle? You know, play a couple of songs. And then I really shut up and I started making like a shadow. I said, this is probably a really good time for me to sort of, I couldn't back away because there was a pillar behind me. So I said, well, maybe I'll just be invisible for a second. And because Jimmy Page had been inducted with the Yardbirds the year before, and had got up on the stage before, he goes, oh, that would be nice, John, yeah, let's do that. And then he goes, oh, I have to tell you something, because I've done this before. About the band, they don't know how to come in. Which I thought was quite funny. Anyway, that was it. That was not the most exciting story in the history.
But it was a good one, and we're happy to have encounters of Jimmy Page. Do we have anybody else in the audience? My dear friend over there at another table to the left. Where is he? I can't see him. Come on. All right, Jackson Scott, everybody. Jackson Scott, incredible musician. Here, just arrived from Spain and Mexico, and thrilled to have him here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here, and I love the intro of the book. You're an amazing writer. I mean, it's incredible. It's beautiful the way you conjure up these amazing feelings through the pine trees and all that. It's absolutely gorgeous. Once I was doing a gig in London, and I used to have a residency at this club called the Cuckoo Club, and I just finished doing a sound check, and it was about 6 in the afternoon, and I went to walk around Soho with this friend of mine, Cristina. She's Colombian. And as I'm walking there with a guitar case going down Brewery Street, I'm just like, oh my God, fuck me, that's the guitarist from Led Zeppelin over there. She's like, no. And I'm like, yeah. And I was with my girlfriend Alejandra as well at the time. And she goes, oh my God, let's go to say hello to him. I'm like, no, Christina, no. And she just starts running after him down the street. I'm like, oh for God's sake. So I'm running after her, and she's running after him, and he's just walking down with his like art books along the street like that. And she goes, hey, excuse me. And then she turns to me and she goes, what's he called? Jimmy Page. She just said, Jimmy, we love your music. It's wonderful. And she was a beautiful girl. And he goes, hey, thank you very much. That's good. And he goes, well, what do you do? And she said, I'm a painter. He said, I love painting. These beautiful books on art. And she's like, oh, that's so cool. And what are we doing here anyway? Let's go and have a drink somewhere. And he's like, yeah, okay. So we go into this bar, and we sat down with him for an hour, and he bought us loads of beer. He drank Coca-Cola, but he was a really nice guy. And we spoke for an hour solidly about everything except music, which was really nice. Architecture, painting, dance, politics, all kinds of stuff. But he was a really nice guy, and that was that.
Thank you so much.
So
thank you for these two lovely gentlemen that sincerely, on the spot, I put them on the spot, you know, old friends, new friends, dear friends, and loving it. So, Christy Alexander Hallberg, let's give a big round of applause. Thank you so much for everybody that came tonight. Thank you for this incredible book, Searching for Jimmy Page.
Thank you so much, Kerry, York, Dana. Thank thank you for everybody who came out. I really appreciate it. This was wonderful. Thank you.
All right, so let's have a big celebration and partay, drink up, enjoy, and we're out of here at 9 because Laura has another event. So we'll be reconjoining downstairs and hanging out all night long. Bye.
Thank you.
Only 6 books left.
Hey everyone, we've only got 6 books left, so come on up and get a signed copy. Also want to let you know it's not a hard out at 9 o'clock. We have a ukulele cabaret that's going to be doing Rocky Horror Picture Show, the album, starting at 9 o'clock tonight, and it's going to be fun. It's open to the public, so you're welcome to hang here, you're welcome to hang downstairs, wherever you want to be.
I said let's hang, let's hang, let's hang.
So
let's hang.
we're not rushing you out at all. We want you to stick around.
Time
Again.
I thought that was great. Yeah, that was great.
Lori and I have had some famous moments on the stage.
A lot of dreadful. This is really good.
It's the celebration
A
stage.
lot of dreadful book events. Oh yeah. Like this thing could be really boring. Yeah, this is great.
Tour, I guess, or whatever. You typically